Hope you guys didn't eat a lot of carbs during lunch, and I'll try my best not to make you sleep. So my name is Griffiths. You can follow me on Twitter, McGriffiths. And currently, I work for a company called Zapper. Originally, I'm from here in Joburg, left 3 years ago to join Zapper, and I lead the Windows client team at Zapper. And during my spare time, I lead a community of developers for the program from Facebook, Developer Circles Cape Town. So today, what I want to do is, I want to take your mind on a jog, on a memory lane. Some of you might have experienced this. Some of you might have heard the stories from those who've experienced it, right? So about 10 years ago, maybe, when you wanted to go on vacation, it was troublesome if you didn't have a travel agent to plan that vacation for you. You want a specific type of experience that you want to have, it would be hard. But today, apps like Airbnb make that easy. If you don't want to stay in a conventional hotel, you can tailor your experience of how you want to make. These kind of apps have become more of a standard. You want to go on vacation, you'll tell your friend, hey, Airbnb, or any other app like that. Similar to transportation. Getting around, back then, you had to have yellow pages and know if the driver is available. You'd probably call like multiple drivers before you get your ride. But today, within minutes, certain things like this are achievable. And these have become a standard through apps like Uber or Taxify. But what about us, developers? What about the building blocks? How do we get something which will give us a standard way of doing things in a more faster way and easier way, right? I'm going to talk around .NET, and it's going to be a .NET standard future for everyone. How we can build solutions quicker and in a more approachable way. So what I want you to look at is this picture. It's a bit grainy, but it's a very huge picture, right? So this is currently .NET Standard 2.0, and these are the versions that exist for .NET Standard. And those are the targets that .NET Standard 2.0 would target, what you can build with .NET Standard 2.0. So why the need? Why the need? Why would you want to use .NET Standard, right? Because, other frameworks do exist. About 15 years ago, Microsoft shipped .NET Framework. With .NET Framework, what you had was app models where you have WPF, Windows Forms, consoles, and ASP.NET. That's what you could build. And then those had their .NET Framework base class libraries, which are the ones that give you the system operations. And then came .NET Core. .NET Core, what you could build is console apps, ASP.NET Core, and also it came with its base class libraries, which is the .NET Core BCL. And then the guys at Xamarin, while using the Mono framework, they came with another framework where you can build iOS, Android, or macOS apps using Xamarin. And those also were based off the Mono BCL. And going forward, if you were to introduce another framework, this will work in a similar fashion. So now, let's unpack these and get to understand them better. So with the .NET framework, what you would get is that those are the app models that you would build for and the base class libraries that it comes with, right? So this is Microsoft's mature framework. Everyone knows it. It's not open source, but it's available for reference. It supports a variety of applications on Windows. And also, it ships with Windows and serviced through Windows updates. But you can also install it on your machine by downloading it or installing Visual Studio. And then come .NET Core. This is cross-platform, open source, and modular. It decouples .NET from Windows to run on non-Windows environment, where you can run .NET on Linux or .NET on Mac OS. And then with Xamarin, what you could do here is you could use your existing .NET skills to write iOS, Android, and Windows apps. So it's based on the cross-platform open source implementation of Mono. So why do we need the standard? Why is there a need for standardization if we do have these frameworks already? So when you're building something which is going to be cross-platform, when you have these experiences where nowadays when you build an app, people expect you to have a website, and also you want to share the code from that. So if you're going to build on the .NET stack and you having these multiple experiences will require multiple .NET implementation. So what then happens is that code sharing becomes a challenge, because now you have to be sure that the APIs that you're using are available on the other frameworks that you're using. So with the .NET standard, it is a formal specification of .NET APIs that are intended to be available on all .NET implementations. So let's go back to that diagram again. So what you had is your app models and also the base class libraries, right? Now, what happens is if we move those down a bit, what you get there is a .NET standard library, which will give you platform agnostic assemblies, which will allow you that all these implementation have to implement that .NET standard library. And also, the .NET platform standard also gives contracts to that .NET framework, .NET Core, and also xamarin. So it provides, so what .NET gives us, what .NET standard gives us is a uniformity within the .NET ecosystem, where you can actually be able to share code, build things which, because of the base class APIs are the same across all these frameworks that implement .NET standard library. So it also enables developers to produce portable libraries that are usable across all .NET implementations. Probably right now you're asking yourself, but we do have portable class libraries for those things. Later on, I will get into that to make you understand how .NET standard differs from portable class libraries. So now when you're going to build .NET for .NET standard, what version do you target? So coming back to the bigger picture, we spoke about, So we spoke about the versioning there at the bottom, right? So now there are trade-offs with what you want to target. So the higher the version, the more APIs are going to be available to you, right? And the lower the version, the more platforms you can target. So I'm going to show you a chart here where you have .NET standard there at the top, and then you have all the other frameworks which you can implement. So the versions are there. If you look at the bottom, you have Windows. So with Windows 8.1, the highest version of .NET standard, if you want to target Windows 8.1, the highest version would be 1.2 there at the top. And also going further as well, you have all these other implementations where the versions which you can target with this. So it comes back to what I was saying, that the trade-offs are the higher the version, the more APIs you're going to have, which is you can build more stuff, but also you're going to have less platforms which you can target. But the lower the version that you have, you're going to have less APIs and more platforms which you can target. Oops. Okay. Demo goals. Okay, so now coming back to the conversation about portable class libraries, right? The short story of it is that the .NET standard is a replacement for portable class libraries. And the long story of it is that .NET standard improves the experience of creating portable class libraries with a standard base class library that will target most frameworks that will implement it. And the result of that is that you have uniformity across all the .NET implementations. So also, a library targeting .NET standard is a .NET standard-based portable class library. And also, existing portable class libraries are profile-based class libraries. So what do I mean with this? So let's look at the compatibility of the portable class library profiles and the .NET Standard implementation. So what you have here is, because of the portable class libraries are profile-based, so you have all those profiles and also the platforms which those profiles will implement. And also with .NET Standard, there you can see which profile is suitable for that .NET Standard version. So if you would want to build for .NET Framework 4.5, Windows 8, Windows Phone 8.1, Windows Phone Silverlight, not that everyone builds for it nowadays, you'll use profile 259, so on and so on. So now, when you look at .NET Standard and also the portable class libraries, because back then, what you would do is, if you want to have shared code across your frameworks, you would use portable class libraries. What is it that is different between the two? So both of the APIs define, both of these define APIs for binary code sharing, but .NET Standard is a curated set of APIs, and PCL profiles are defined by the intersection of the platforms that you would target. Say, if you're going to create a PCL, all of this, what would happen is you want to build an app for ASP.NET and Windows 10. So all of these would have some kind of shared implementations which intersect. So that's how you can build all of this. But .NET Standard, it gives you a full set of these implementations that you can get. So the PCL profiles represent Microsoft platforms. That's also another thing why you'd want to move to a .NET Standard implementation. And also, .NET Standard is agnostic to a platform, where you can use .NET Standard to build for Xamarin. So, and also you can use it on .NET Core. So before we recap, I want to show you code, on Visual Studio, how this will work. So what I have here, okay, let's close all this. Oops, sorry. Switch that. Where you are? Oh, crap. .1. So I'm going to buff it up to 2.0. And I'm going to show you, so here I have this as my reference. So if I'm going, so what this .NET Core library supports is .NET Core 2.0, right? So these are compatible. But if I were to buff the version lower to 1.0, it will complain because of it's not compatible anymore. So those libraries that .NET 2.0 implement, .NET Core doesn't have access to. It's not supported. And also, coming to this framework app as well. So because of that reference table I showed you, what you have here is it's not supported. It will give you that orange triangle. And similar thing, if I were to change the version of the .NET Framework client to 4.5, say yes there. all of these references now will complain because of they are not supported. And then let's keep it at 4.6.1. And let's build that. Oops. So yeah, so that's what you get. So if you can see that error there, says that .NET Core library, not .NET Core app 1.0, it cannot be referenced by a project that targets .NET Framework 4.6.1. So I need to change the version there. So far, any questions? By an API. So these are basically the sets of, so the set of, okay, let me drink water for that. Didn't expect that. So with the APIs, basically these are the building blocks which allows you to build for that target. So these are, how can I put it? So sets of methods or instructions which you can, if let's say you want to build for, like you want .NET 2.0, it will have APIs that if you're building for Windows Phone 8, Windows Phone 8 will not have access for that. I don't know if I answered your question. Say?
As distinct from the base class libraries? I mean, are those different things, or is that?
So, meaning the APIs that you get with .NET Standard?
Yeah.
So
well,
what?
I think, I mean, the base class libraries provide you all your system.
Yeah, so those are your system operations. So that gives you access to system operations. So the APIs is basically what that manufacturer will give you, like say maybe, not manufacturer per se, but what the platform will give you to have access to speak to certain operations in that base class libraries. Where's that?
Just maybe to give more clarity on that, what would be an example of the difference that you wouldn't get and you would get with the half version?
Okay, I'm going to come back to, so what would be the difference of APIs that you would get?
Using a half version as opposed to using a lot version.
Okay. So now, with how .NET Standard works is that with the new version that comes, is that because they include more APIs which you have access to. So remember that diagram that I showed you. So what they're doing now, what Microsoft is, oops. Yeah. Okay, my mouse keeps disappearing. Oh. The hell? Okay. So you're saying what would be the different API that you get?
If I started off with the 1.0,
Yeah.
what would I get with moving to 2.0? Why would I need to move across?
So the reason why you'd want to move to 2.0 is because of there's more implementations, there's more APIs which you can implement on, which will give you it's more features that you can target.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Matt, do you have an idea? Okay. Any more questions? Okay, cool. So, where was I? So coming back to the version here that will be supported, if I move to 2.0, it fixes, so you saw that, okay, let me do that again. So some of the dependencies that are there will give you that error, that warning, that it's not supported, because of it has more features that it can that it can implement. Also, if you now bump it up now because of .NET Core 2.0 is compatible with .NET Platform 2.0, it fixes that for you. So coming back to what we spoke about. Yeah. So yeah, we've addressed these. Lost my trail of slides there. So now to recap on what you can do with this is that with .NET Standard, it's a specification of APIs that all .NET implementations must provide. And also, going .NET Core allows you cross-platform, but functionality can't be used on other frameworks. And what this means is that you can use these you can run .NET Core on Linux, Windows, and Mac OS, but the functionality that you have on that code can't be used on that framework. So you can't ship this as your portable class library. And also, .NET Standard is compatible with any frameworks that supports that version of the .NET Standard. So yeah, that's about it. Any more questions? Okay, cool. So I've got stickers available here in the front if you want to grab some laptop stickers. And also, I think I need to give away a book. Matt? Yeah.
So, I used to be in the Windows world doing some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And everything used to be fairly simple.
Yeah.
And now that I look at this, and like even making a console app these days, to me it seems extremely convoluted. Like, I basically just click things until it works. So, you who is still doing this,
Yeah.
do you find this all confusing?
So
Like, is it just because I haven't read up enough and I don't understand?
So at first when I started, because I was using a Windows Phone Silverlight, and that was pretty much when you have to move up, it was shit. Sorry, my language. So basically now, when you now have to move to UWP, there's more reading which you have to do, and also it's still, once you get the grab of things of how you can build these things, it becomes easy, because the one thing that when I read up about this, my understanding is that you would want to have that code that you have, you can take it and put it, let's say, on a xamarin project, and it would work. And the one way to do that, because nowadays, if you try and create a portable class library in .NET, in Visual Studio, what it gives you is that deprecated, I got a deprecated message some time ago, or old, or something like that, that they're not going to support it going forward. So now I had to read up about .NET Standard on how I can actually take these, the building blocks and put it on different pages. So the only thing which is, when you talk about Windows dev, the only thing that now is more, I think, more of a hurdle to cross is the way they do the UI, because of they want that whole working from a smallest device that they have, if they still have a phone, and going up to a Surface Hub type of thing, where it will be much bigger, and all the UI components, the way you do UI is pretty much different than how you would do it in Silverlight. But in terms of like the code, it's still the same. It's still the same thing. It's just that you have to know what you need to support.
Okay, and then one more question.
Yeah.
Has any of this benefited you directly at your job at Zapper? I worked on one of your clients.
Yeah.
And we weren't targeting anything else.
Yeah.
So like, has any of this helped you at all?
Sure. You see now, there's going to be some NDAs there and whatnot. So basically, what this has helped me with is moving from Silverlight to UWP, because that was the hardest thing ever to do. Because you have this code which, when you try and you do a click-through of, hey, let me try and support UWP, everything will just, you get like 5,000 errors. So reading up on this, you get to understand, oh, how can I build these things so that it can be easy. So it has helped me at Zappa. Okay, any more questions?
This referencing of binaries across different versions, do you have any idea of how that's done? I mean, is there a performance hit because there's some translation that has to happen at runtime between the different versions?
So I haven't read up to, in terms of like performance and all that. So what I mainly focused on was the support. So, but when I look at this, just gonna go back a few slides. Bear with me. Oh, there. So when I read up on this, mostly what they talk about is that .NET Standard is more of a contract that all the other frameworks will have to implement. So it simplifies the way in terms of how these base class libraries would be done. Because what would happen is that if there would be a new framework, you have to have those app models which you would target and also have a different base class to it, where it becomes harder for code sharing. And also, now what .NET Standard Library does is that you can just reference .NET Standard Library and you have that. Did I answer your question? Yeah, I know. I haven't read on performance, but it's something which you challenged me to do. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, is that all? Oh.
Okay. Hopefully it's the last question.
No, you can swing more questions. I'll try.
On the .NET Core 2, which is meant to support like your open source.
Yes.
So do you know if it's supporting all the different Linux that's available, or is it a specific one?
So I tried to stay away from Linux because, yeah, the first time I did that, I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah, so I'm a Windows guy at heart. But in terms of .NET Core 2 support, it's cross-platform, which is you can run it on. So what it gives you also, what .NET Core gives you is the CLI. If you're into CLI, you can run CLI. So I'm guessing it would be available on Linux. But in terms of which distributions, I'm not sure.
Well, thank you for the presentation. It was well done. I use this stuff into in Mac, and it works quite well. It made it actually very easier. Mine is more like a comment than a question per se.
Yeah.
Coming from like a Java background, or not, I mean, having been more used to like open source stuff, I was very much impressed with what they've done with .NET Core and maybe the elaborations on .NET Standard, because now it is easier to bootstrap new projects. It works quite better, just like as if you're also using any other open source technologies.
Yeah.
If let's say you see how quick it is to get a Rails app or a Spring Boot app, and you see the way .NET Core 2 does it as well, it's quite really well done. For all those who are more in the open source communities, Java and stuff like that, you'll find it very easier to cross over. I mean,
Yeah.
it didn't take me days to really, I didn't need to install Visual Studio or anything like that per se. I can do this stuff in my Mac and it works out just okay.
Yeah.
So just a comment on that.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, because mostly what .NET Core was for, what I spoke about is decoupling .NET from Windows so that it can be more cross-platform in terms of Mac OS or Linux, right? So what it gives you is you don't have to have Visual Studio. You don't have to install gigs and gigs of Visual Studio. You can just install .NET Core and run it from CLI.
Okay, just a quick question. So on the Xamarin platform,
Yeah.
I see here it supports iOS, Android, and macOS.
Yes.
Does it compile into native code, or is it like one
So-
of those hybrid apps?
Okay. stand corrected on this, but with xamarin compilation, with iOS, I'm forgetting the LL, I forgot, but say? Yeah, it does compile to native code, so it uses, so short answer is it does compile. And then in terms of how it does it, with Android, the reason why you can, on your Windows, you can run Android straight to your phones because the just-in-time compiler will convert your code to native Android. And then with iOS, you would need the machine, the iOS machine to build that code for you. Okay? Yeah, a Mac machine. Okay, cool. So it's going to be a bit harder for me to pick who gets the book. So, Matt, Matt, I'm not going to give you the book because, you know, you're... Oh, okay, cool. But I want you to pick someone who gets the book. Okay. Come get the book. So this is written by Satya Nadella, Hit Refresh. So it's basically, so when Satya Nadella came into Microsoft, that's when the whole open source came about, where most of the stuff were being open sourced. Yeah. Okay, guys, that's it from me. Thank you. And also, I have some cool stickers here if you're into laptop stickers. So what I have is a couple of Facebook, Visual Studio, and also